Hello, my name is Laurie Dean. I'm doing this video presentation for Elizabethtown College on workplace bullying and incivility. For my introduction, I'd like to talk about my thesis statement, which is employers need to develop a policy focused on a zero tolerance stance against workplace bullying and incivility. So that'll become a little bit more apparent as we go through this video presentation and discuss some more of the topics regarding the target, the bully, the bullying, why those people choose to bully, things like that. So let's move on. Next, we're going to talk about workplace bullying and incivility. So what I want to talk about here is bullying and really take a look at defining that. And so bullying is the repeated abusive behavior or acts against one or more persons, and that person is known as the target. There's also different types of bullying: cyberbullying, verbal abuse, sabotage, work interference, threats, intimidation, humiliation, things like that. The difference between bullying and incivility. So incivility is defiant behaviors, but they're at a lower intensity that violate respectful workplace norms. So they're not those repeated abusive behaviors. They're more vague with intent to harm the target, but they're really, you're not quite sure, it's not as abrasive as an offense, things like that. So you're really not quite sure. They can be a little bit questionable and harder to define. So some of those examples would be social isolation, rumors, some false information rumors, things like that. Cyber incivility can occur through text messages, emails, things like that. So what I want to talk about in a little bit more detail here would be some of those acts. So again, I mentioned the repeated acts and the harmful mistreatment of one or more persons with that abusive conduct, the threats, the humiliation, the intimidation, the interference, so the sabotage, that prevents someone from getting their work done, the verbal abuse, the incivility. So some examples of that would be, say, a staff member comes in the morning and says good morning, and that person is ignored. That could be questionable. Did they not hear that person say good morning, or are they intentionally ignoring the person and choosing not to say good morning? So that's where we kind of draw that fine line, in that gray type of area comes in there. Some other examples would be not helping others when they ask for help, not sharing work-related information, some insults, excluding people from activities. So if there's a luncheon or people are going out for lunch, excluding everyone, or including everyone in the office but that one person that they're trying to single out as the target. Some of the examples of the cyber incivility would be blunt emails. So really being really aggressive in your tone with the emails, time-sensitive information in the emails with deadlines that might not be realistic. And then some really things that I wouldn't have thought of initially in terms of this would be not refilling the coffee machine for the next person that comes in. When you know that person's coming on break or something like that, and not refilling the printer with the copy paper, things like that. And then here you want to look for those type of retaliation behaviors. So those would be some of those examples that I wanted to talk about here. Next, we'll talk about the target versus the bully. So the target, some of those characteristics are the more seasoned employee. They're singled out. They can tend to be the target. The independent employee. Some of the other characteristics that we look for in the target would be someone that has those excellent people skills and technical skills. They tend to be singled out. The non-confrontational person. Somebody that's a rule follower, or might be the whistleblower that tends to have that high integrity and honesty. those are the people that are singled out by the bully, and they would be the target. Why people bully? The bully often feels threatened by those people that tend to have those characteristics that they may not possess. They might feel threatened for if they're stronger and they have more strengths. So they could be jealous and feel that their job might be in jeopardy. So then they tend to single that person out. The target's the threat to the bully, and they exhibit those strengths. The bullies are often jealous of the target because they don't possess those traits. And the target tends to possess honesty, integrity. Again, they might be that whistleblower that tends to bring things to management or leadership's attention. And oftentimes, the bully's kind of that mid-level or lower level performer, and they may not want their weaknesses to be pointed out, so they might feel threatened by that. So those are just some of the reasons why someone may choose to bully another person. Some of the other reasons might be differences, such as someone's race or their beliefs or their gender. More often than not, women tend to be bullied more than men, and they're singled out. The minorities tend to be singled out, such as the African American or Hispanics. Hispanics actually have the higher tendency to be singled out and bullied more so than any other race. So let's get into this a little bit more. So again, we'll talk about the bullies threatened by the target's technical skills. The bully's abusive personality is some of the reasons why. The target's not a political game player, so they tend to stay away from some of the office politics. The target's not popular with others, so they kind of keep to themselves, and that they may be perceived as weak. So the bully sees them as an easy target and somebody that they can pick on and kind of, bring out their weaknesses or kind of bring out or kind of bring to the forefront some of the different things with upper leadership and things like that to just kind of portray them in a negative light, whether it may be the correct information or incorrect information. That's kind of the thing that the bully does. The bully's rewarded at the workplace. That often does not tend to happen, so that's one of the reasons why they feel threatened. And then the group the target deliberately provokes attacks upon themselves. That really is one of the lower level things that happens. We don't really perceive that as being one of the reasons why the bully tends to bully the victim or the target. So again, let's talk a little bit more about the gender statistics. I touched on this a little bit before. Females are often bullied more so than the males. 60% of female are targeted and 33% of male are the targets. 70% of males are the bullies and 30% of females are the bullies. So that just gives you an idea how that gender plays a role in bullying and workplace incivility. Industry trends. So let's talk about healthcare industry. So the healthcare industry tends to have one of the higher incidences for workplace incivility and bullying. And I believe from what I've been reading, that's because there's a lot of different hierarchies there. So in those instances, it could be peer-to-peer, it could be superior to peer, It could be, you know, provider to staff member, those kinds of things. So there's a lot more opportunity there for those incidences to occur. And I think in the healthcare industry, they have those zero tolerance policies. So they're often, those incidences are reported. That's why I think they have a higher tendency. You'll hear about those incidences a little bit more. The construction industry is another area where workplace bullying and incivility occurs. The target there would be possibly one of those older workers that they feel might not be able to do the work anymore, or somebody that's salary's too high and they want to bring somebody in that could at a lower wage, or somebody that's younger that they feel might be able to do the job a little bit better. So those are just some of the differences and some of the trends that we see with just two industries that I wanted to mention here for this project. Some of the effects from workplace bullying on the target, and some of these crossover and they're the same between the target and the organization. So when the victim, emotional and mental health, so they often have to seek counseling, therapy, sometimes medication, they have anxiety, they tend to miss work, increased absences at work. They have physical effects, so they have physical illnesses because the abuse takes its toll on their physical body, mental health, and their physical health as well. There's a loss of productivity, so it affects their overall performance at work. They're not as productive. They, you know, because they're missing work, they don't have that productivity there. So that has an impact on the organization as well, because they have loss of productivity at work, and then impacts the employee performance. Sometimes it impacts staffing, and then the employee separates from the organization, so they lose a good employee. There's an impact on the work environment. It could impact safety, and it could be a toxic work environment. And then revenues could be impacted. So there could be a loss of revenue because of the staffing issues, increased absences, loss of productivity, that impacts revenue. There is an increase in healthcare costs because the employee could be seeking increased healthcare needs, such as doctor visits, emotional and mental health visits, things like that, medication costs that could incur more costs on the organization from a healthcare perspective. So some of the solutions and strategies, managers can model those behaviors, and that happens a lot with nurses and nurse managers, and not just in the healthcare industry, but all industries. It starts as the manager modeling the behavior that they expect their employees to act in the same manner. So they want to be the person that models that behavior. Employees can also have developed strong, respectful working relationships. So there's strength in numbers. As employees develop that strong support system and have bonds with other employees and form, you know, a pact, they won't tend to be singled out. So there would be an opportunity there. And then also for employees and employers to review the expectations and develop a code of conduct and policies during onboarding, and review those as changes occur and keep updating those, and really develop to make sure that there is a zero tolerance policy out there for workplace bullying and incivility. We really want to have the message be that there is going to be no tolerance. If you are a victim, you want to document your incidents. Managers should investigate and take all concerns seriously, and then have that zero tolerance policy where they hold staff accountable and give consequences, and pursue any corrective action as needed. So my conclusion would be workplace bullying is still a concern today. Every employee deserves the right to feel safe while at work. Employers need to take a stance against workplace bullying and incivility. In addition, they need to educate leaders, managers, and staff, increasing their awareness of this issue, and then hold each employee accountable for their actions. These are the references that I use for this presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it, and have a good evening. Thank you.